This is English shorthand dictation number 195 and the dictation speed is 120 words per minute. Ready? Start. Sir, the debate on the motion that has been going on for the last 2 or 3 days reveals that there are two definite points of view presented by the members of this House. There is one point of view which holds that the action taken by the government by arresting the members of the Congress and in suppressing the violent movement that has sprung up was not justified. There is one section of the House which holds that the action taken by the government is perfectly justified. In a situation like this, it might be well for the government to say that it is unnecessary for them to intervene in this debate for the simple reason that one side of the House cancels the other. But it seems to me that it would not be proper for government members and particularly the Indian members of the Executive Council to allow this matter to rest there. Rather than let the burden remain on the shoulders of one section of the House, I think it is very necessary that the members should take the burden upon themselves, and I therefore propose to deal with some of the points that have been made by that section of the House which thinks that the action was not justified. The points that have been raised evidently fall into two categories. Some points are particular in their significance and in their nature. Some points are of general importance, and although it might be desirable for some of us not only to deal with the particular points but also with the general points, I am afraid time is so short that one has to make his selection in meeting some of the charges that have been leveled. I therefore propose to offer my remarks only on two charges which have been leveled by the party opposed against the government. Sir, the critics of the government have said that the government were not justified in arresting the members of the Congress. If I understand the argument correctly, the argument seems to be that the Congress is a body which believes in non-violence, and that if the Congress had been allowed to be free, they certainly would have controlled the situation in such a manner that they would have prevented violence from emerging. It seems to me that the members who take that line have not correctly read what has happened to the Congress and the members of the working committee during the last 2 years with regard to the principle of non-violence. Sir, as I read the proceedings of the Congress during the last 2 or 3 years, the impression that has been left upon my mind is that there has been a terrible landslide in the principle of non-violence as has been proclaimed by the Congress. The non-violence has been deeply buried. I have no hesitation on that point at all. There is another point which the honorable members are not aware of, and about which I would like to make some reference. It is not only a fact that almost all members of the Congress Working Committee had ceased to have any faith in non-violence, and a great many of them had become indifferent to the principle, but there is enough body of evidence to indicate that inside the Congress there was an attempt being made for a planned campaign of violence. It has been said by the members of the opposition that although repression may be justifiable by the circumstances of the movement, it should not be the duty of the government merely to stop with repression, but that government must take some constructive step. When one begins to examine the constructive steps to which reference has been made from different sections of the House, one cannot but be surprised at the bewildering medley of suggestions that have been made. I therefore pick upon only one which appears to me something definite and something which you can put your teeth in and examine. The suggestion has been made that the government of the day should be recast, refashioned, and should work as a national government. Now, in order that I may be able to present to the House the point of view which I am urging with regard to this suggestion, it would be better if I begin by stating what the present government is, what its nature is. As honorable members are aware, Section 33 of the Government of India Act says that the superintendence, direction, and control of the civil and military government of India is vested in the Governor General in Council. I am a bit of a constitutional lawyer. I do not claim to be an expert, but I do claim to be a student. I have examined this section 33 and compared it with the constitutions that exist elsewhere. When I take as a measure the wishes of the Indian people as to the nature of the government they want, I have no hesitation in saying that this section 33 provides a government which has two characteristics which are of infinite importance. The one characteristic which this government has got is that it excludes autocracy completely. The second characteristic which this government has got is that it imposes collective responsibility, a matter which is so much after the heart of the Indian people. The position is that every member of the Executive Council is a colleague of the Governor General. The fact can never be forgotten and ought never to be forgotten. If Indians are wanting a government which is democratic, which excludes autocracy, and which by law imposes upon those who are in charge of the administration a collective responsibility, then my submission to the House is that you cannot devise a better form of government than the one we have. I know it has been said against this government that although that may be so, this government is subject to the veto of the Viceroy and of the Secretary of State. I call it veto, you can call it orders. I would like to use a constitutional phrase as I am a constitutional man. What I said is that this government is not a free government. It is a government that is subject to the veto of the Viceroy. It is also subject to the veto of the Secretary of State. With regard to the veto of the Viceroy, I would like to point out that the veto is confined to matters which relate to the safety and tranquility of India. It is not a general veto. It is not a veto which applies to the day-to-day administration of the country. I am perfectly prepared to admit that there is a veto and that the veto exists. My question to the honorable members who are so much disturbed by the veto is what the significance of the veto is. What does the veto mean? Let me state it in the most categorical terms because I find there is a lot of confusion in the minds of many honorable members who wish to talk about the constitutional question: what is the difference between an autocratic government and a responsible government?